I came home after 12 years of digging wells in East Africa, and the first thing I saw was my boy shoveling manure in the barn I built for him. He looked up like I was nobody, just some old wanderer off the road. He even handed me a cup of water from the outdoor spigot, like he was doing a favor for a drifter looking for day work. He did not recognize me. He could not tell that the weather-beaten old man standing there in the dust was his own father. Not a vagrant, not a stranger, just a man who had been gone so long he might as well have been a ghost. And that ghost was carrying $340 million in mining royalties, plus a hunger for justice that would not quit. Before I tear their little kingdom to pieces, you need to hear how it all began. My name is Walter. I am 67 years old. For 12 years, folks back home figured I was either dead from malaria or lost somewhere out in the Tanzanian bush. My brother, Michael, worked hard to make sure people believed that. He told everyone I had lost my mind. He said I walked away from my family and vanished into Africa like some broken man chasing forgiveness. He was half right. I did go looking for redemption, but I was never broken. I was building something. Out there, I helped put in wells and water systems for villages that had never had clean water. While I was doing that work, I stumbled onto a lithium deposit. At the time, I did not realize what it would turn into. I did not know it would grow into a fortune big enough to put me among the richest men in the United States. What I also did not know was this. While my money was growing, my family back in Montana was being ripped apart. When I finally came home, the sky over Montana looked like cold iron. An October wind swept across the plains, sharp and mean, bringing the smell of pine and the promise of snow. I stood at the edge of my land and stared at the ranch I bought 20 years earlier. 3,000 acres of good ground, sitting up against the Absaroka Mountains. Back when I was still a successful civil engineer pulling government contracts, I paid $3.2 million in cash for that ranch. I bought it for my son, Brandon. I wanted him to have a legacy. I wanted him to have something solid to hand down, a home that could last for generations. But the place I was looking at now did not feel like mine. The main house had been altered. Somebody put a ridiculous fountain out front. Expensive cars sat in the circular driveway. A swimming pool had been added, too, and a woman I did not know was stretched out beside it like she owned the world. I tugged my dusty hat down and kept my face calm. My clothes were worn on purpose. My beard was long, gray, and wild. I looked exactly like I planned to look. An old man with miles on him. A stranger. A maybe hired hand. Over in Africa, I learned something simple. If you want to understand what is really going on, you watch first. You do not walk in announcing yourself. A predator does not warn the prey. So I stayed quiet and headed for the barn. Inside, a man was pitching hay into a stall. He was thin, too thin. His shirt hung on him like cloth on a fence post. His hair was unkempt, and the dark circles under his eyes looked like they had been carved there by years of lost sleep. My lungs locked up. It was Brandon, my son. He was 42 now, but he looked closer to 60. The strong young man I left behind was gone. In his place stood somebody worn down, hollowed out, and running on fumes. He heard my boots on the concrete and looked up. "Excuse me, sir," he said. His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "If you are looking for work, you need to talk to the foreman. I am just the stable hand." I wanted to say his name. I wanted to step forward and grab him and tell him I was home. But my throat tightened and no sound came out. I stared at his hands instead. They were calloused and cracked. His knuckles were split and bleeding from the cold. Then I saw his eyes. Same hazel eyes his mother had. But they were empty now. No spark. No hope. I swallowed hard. "I just need some water," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It has been a long walk from the highway." Brandon nodded like that made perfect sense. He set the pitchfork down and stepped outside to the spigot on the barn wall. He filled a dented tin cup and brought it back to me. When he handed it over, his sleeve slid up. Bruises covered his forearm, yellow and purple, some old, some fresh. He leaned in a little and spoke low. "You should move along before they see you," he whispered, glancing toward the main house. "My aunt does not like strangers on the property. She will call the sheriff." "Your aunt," I repeated, slow, like I was just making conversation. "She owns this place," he said. His eyes dropped to his boots. "My father left it to her when he died. At least that is what the lawyer said. I work here to pay off the debts he left behind." It felt like a sledgehammer hit my chest. "Debts?" I said. "What debts?" He shrugged, but shame burned red in his face. "My father was not a good man, sir. He borrowed money from everybody. He left us with nothing but bills. Aunt Susan and Uncle Michael took us in. They let us stay here, but we have to earn our keep. Us? I asked. Who else? His voice cracked. My daughter, he said. Olivia. She is 8 years old. She helps in the kitchen. A granddaughter. I had a granddaughter I had never met, and she was working inside my own home like a servant. I forced myself to breathe. Where is your wife? I asked. His face went flat, like a door shutting. She left, he said. 3 years after you, after my father disappeared. She could not handle the debt collectors. She could not handle Michael. She left one night and took nothing. I have not heard from her since. The cup shook in my hand. Not from weakness, from rage. And your mother? I asked. Linda. What happened to her? He looked at me funny, like he could not figure out why some stranger cared. She died, he said quietly. 5 years ago. Heart attack. The doctor said it was stress. She spent years trying to clear my father's name. She believed he was innocent. She believed he would come back. His voice dropped even lower. But he never did. And it killed her. Linda was gone. My wife. My partner of 30 years. Dead. And I was not there. I had been in Tanzania, building water systems, while she fought for my name until it broke her heart. I am sorry, I managed. I am sorry for your loss. Brandon gave me a shrug that did not belong to a man his age. It was the shrug of someone who had been pushed down so many times he forgot what standing tall felt like. It is what it is, he said. Then his eyes flicked toward the main house again. Look, you should go. If Uncle Michael sees me talking to strangers, he will dock my pay again. Olivia needs her medicine this month. Medicine? I asked. He swallowed. She has diabetes, he said. Type 1. The insulin is expensive. Michael controls the family account. He decides when she gets her shots. Something cold twisted in my gut. He controls her insulin, I repeated. Brandon nodded, eyes glossy. It keeps us in line, he whispered. If I complain, if I try to leave, if I do anything they do not like, Olivia does not get her medicine. He looked right at me then, like he wanted someone to understand. Do you understand? They own us. They own every breath we take. I understood. Perfectly. My brother had my son trapped, and he had my granddaughter chained up with her own illness. I set the tin cup down on a hay bale. Thank you for the water, I said. Then I turned and walked out of the barn like I was just another old man passing through. I went down the gravel path. I passed the fountain. I passed the luxury cars. I did not look at the woman by the pool. I kept walking until I reached the county road. A black sport utility vehicle sat there waiting. The door opened, and my lawyer, James, leaned out, his face tight with worry. Did you see him? He asked. I saw him, I said, climbing in. And I saw what they have done. James nodded once. What is the plan, Walter? I looked back at the ranch, the mountains, the land I bought with my own hands. We are taking it all back, I said. But first, I need to know exactly what my brother built on top of my grave. We drove into Bozeman and checked into a hotel. James had rented out an entire floor and put security at both ends of the hallway. He was not playing around. Inside the biggest suite, he had built what he called a war room. The walls were covered with screens. Every table and chair was buried under paper. Files, printouts, bank statements, court records. It looked like a man had been living on coffee and anger for months. He had been digging for 6 months, ever since I resurfaced and got word to him. Show me, I said. James tapped a remote, and the main screen lit up with a timeline. Let us start 12 years ago, he said. You left for Tanzania. Before you went, you signed a power of attorney. It gave your wife, Linda, limited access to ranch money for emergencies only. You also kept quiet about the lithium find because you wanted to confirm how big the deposit really was. That is right, I said. He clicked again. 6 months after you left, your brother, Michael, filed a missing person report. He told the authorities you sent one final letter. In that letter, you supposedly said you were disappearing forever. He claimed you could not live with the guilt of your debts. My jaw tightened. I never sent any letter, I said. I wrote to Linda every month. James nodded, grim as a winter fence post. We found your letters, he said. Michael intercepted every piece of mail that came to the ranch. Linda never got a single one. She never knew you were trying to reach her. I shut my eyes for a second. I pictured my wife sitting by a window, day after day, waiting for any sign of me. Waiting until hope turned into hurt, and hurt turned into silence. James kept going, steady and ruthless. 2 years after you vanished, Michael went to court. He presented a will. It said you left everything to him if you died or became incapacitated. The judge accepted it. The ranch, the bank accounts, all of it moved into Michael and Susan's control. Forged, I said, the word coming out like a growl. He forged my will. James pulled up a report. We have forensic work on it, he said. Your signature was traced from old engineering contracts. The forgery is very clean, but we can prove it is not real. The ink used in the document was not sold commercially until 2 years after the date on the will. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My own brother did not just steal from me. He erased me. What about Brandon? I asked. Why did he not fight it? James let out a slow breath. Your son was 29 when you left, he said. He trusted Michael. They all did. Michael told the family you confessed to embezzlement before you fled. He said you stole money from government projects. He said federal agents were coming, and the only way to protect the family was to let him take control and fix things. Lies, I said. Every single word was a lie, James agreed. But Brandon believed it. He paused, then moved to the next point. Linda believed him at first too, he said. But after a few years, she started asking questions. She started pulling at threads. That is when Michael changed his approach. What did he do? I asked. He isolated them, James said. First, he moved Brandon and Linda out of the main house and into the foreman's cottage. Later, he pushed them into the bunkhouse. Then he started giving them work around the ranch and calling it their contribution. Over the years, they went from family to staff to servants. James clicked again, and numbers filled the screen. Here are the financial records, he said. Michael has been siphoning money for 10 years. He sold 2,000 acres for $4.5 million. He mortgaged the remaining land for another $2 million. We traced accounts in the Cayman Islands, but we cannot touch those yet. My hands curled into fists. And the lithium? I asked. What about my deposit? James gave me a hard, thin smile. That is the best part, he said. Michael does not know it exists. That parcel is under a separate holding company name. He never found the paperwork. He has no idea he is sitting next to a mountain worth around $400 million. I leaned back slowly. So, this was the shape of it. My brother stole the ranch. He used a forged will to do it. He turned my son into a work animal. And he used my granddaughter's health like a leash. That is the picture, I said. James nodded. Yes. I thought about Linda dying believing I walked away. I thought about Brandon, bruised and worn down, thinking his own father was a criminal. And I thought about my granddaughter, 8 years old, depending on monsters to decide whether she got to live. What do we have on Michael as a person? I asked. Not just paperwork. James pulled up a dossier. Michael is 62, he said. He married Susan 15 years ago. It is his third marriage. Susan came from money, but she burned through it. They need the ranch. Without it, they are broke. James scrolled. Their lifestyle costs at least $400,000 a year. They have been selling assets just to keep the shine on their life. And Susan? I asked. James's face tightened. She is the muscle, he said. She runs the house. She is the one who pushed Brandon into the barn. She is the one who pulled your granddaughter out of school and put her to work. Michael is the planner, but Susan is the cruelty. Anybody else in their circle? I asked. A lawyer named Thomas, James said. Last name, Reynolds. He filed the forged documents. He notarized the fake will. He has been their fixer for years. I nodded. 3 enemies, clear as day. We need more than paper, I said. I want them caught in their own voices. I want recordings. I want admissions. I want them so deep in their own words that no jury can climb out with them. James opened a briefcase. Inside were small devices that fit in the palm of a hand. Military-grade listening equipment, he said, not detectable by normal commercial sweepers. Then he leaned in a little. I also have contacts at the Federal Bureau of Investigation Field Office in Billings, he said. They are interested in wire fraud and mail fraud, but they will need probable cause. Then we give them probable cause, I said. I stared at the ranch photos on the screen. But first, I said, I have to get inside that house. I need to see what they have done to my family with my own eyes. James studied me. Walter, he said carefully, you cannot just walk in there. If they recognize you, the whole plan collapses. I smiled, but it was not friendly. They will not recognize me, I said. I have been gone 12 years. I lost 40 pounds. I have a full beard. I look like a homeless drifter. I lifted my hands a little, showing him the worn coat and dust-ground boots. That is exactly who I am going to be. For the next 2 days, I watched the ranch from a distance. I tracked routines. I learned patterns. Michael left every morning at 9 o'clock, headed into town. He spent hours at the local bar, playing the part of a successful ranch owner. Susan stayed home and snapped orders at the staff. Most of the hired hands did not know the real story. To them, it was just another job. Brandon worked from before sunrise until after dark. He repaired fences. He fed livestock. He cleaned stalls. He did anything that needed doing. He ate by himself in the barn. He slept in a tiny room behind the tack storage. No heat. No comfort. Just a cold box to collapse in. And my granddaughter was a shadow. I caught quick looks at her through the kitchen window. Small for her age. Dark hair like her father. Carrying plates. Washing dishes. Moving like she was trying to stay invisible. I did not see her smile once. One time, I saw Susan grab her by the arm and shake her hard enough that the child started crying. I squeezed my binoculars so hard my fingers hurt. I thought I might crack the plastic. On the third day, I made my move. I came in through the north pasture with a battered backpack and a walking stick, looking like a man who had nowhere else to go. I headed to the barn, where Brandon was working, and waited until he saw me. He frowned. "You again," he said. His voice was careful. Not rude, just guarded. "I told you there is no work here." "I am not here for work," I said. "I am looking for a place to sleep for one night. I will be gone by morning. I can work for my supper." Brandon hesitated and glanced toward the house. "If Susan sees you, she will call the sheriff," he said. "She had a man arrested last month for trespassing." "I will stay out of sight," I told him. "I can sleep in the woods. I just need a little food." His expression softened. For a second, I saw the good in him. It was still there, buried under years of being treated like dirt. "Wait here," he said. He disappeared into the barn and came back with a paper bag. Inside was a sandwich and an apple. "This is my dinner," he said, handing it to me. "But you look like you need it more." I took the bag from him, and my hands started shaking so bad I had to steady myself. "You are a good man," I told him. "Your father would be proud of you." Brandon jerked like I had hit him. "My father was a thief," he said, quiet and flat. "And a coward. He left us with nothing." "Maybe," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "Or maybe you never got the full truth." He opened his mouth to answer, but we did not get the chance. A sharp voice cut right through the air like a whip. "Brandon, who is that?" Susan was coming fast across the yard, her fancy boots crunching gravel with every step. She was 55, and her face had been pulled and tightened so many times it did not look natural anymore. It looked like a mask somebody forgot to take off. Her eyes were small and hard, always scanning, always hunting for something to punish. "Nobody, Aunt Susan," Brandon said quick. "Just a drifter. He is leaving." "A drifter," Susan repeated, staring at me with open disgust. "On my property, eating my food." I dropped my head and played my part. "I am sorry, ma'am," I said. "I meant no trouble. Your nephew was just showing Christian kindness." Susan laughed, and it sounded like glass cracking. "Christian kindness." Then she turned on Brandon. "Did you give this bum your dinner?" Brandon did not answer. He did not have to. Susan slapped him across the face. The smack echoed off the barn walls like a gunshot. "Moron," she hissed. "You barely have enough to feed yourself, and you hand it to trash." Then she pointed at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. "Get off my land. Right now, before I have you arrested." I looked at Brandon. He held his cheek and stared at the ground. He did not fight back. He did not even look surprised. This was normal for him. This was his daily life. "I will go," I said softly. Then I added, calm and steady, "But I will remember your hospitality." I walked away like I was leaving for good. But I did not go far. I circled around to the tree-line and found a spot where I could watch the house without being seen. I waited until night settled in. Then I moved. Their security system was a joke. My brother spent money on looks, not on real protection. I bypassed the back door sensor with a simple trick and slipped inside through the mudroom. The inside of the house was exactly what I expected. Susan had redone everything in expensive, awful taste. Gold fixtures everywhere. Crystal chandeliers hanging like trophies. Thick velvet furniture that looked like it belonged in a casino. This was my home. The place I built for my wife and my son. And they turned it into a shrine to greed. I kept my steps quiet and started placing the listening devices. One went in the study, tucked behind a big portrait of Susan. One went in the kitchen, hidden under the island where people stood and talked. One went in the main bedroom, behind the headboard. I was getting ready to leave when I heard something that made my stomach drop. Crying. Soft, muffled crying coming from the basement stairwell. I followed the sound. At the bottom of the stairs was a small storage room. The door was locked from the outside. I knelt down and spoke through the crack. "Hello," I whispered. "Who is in there?" The crying stopped. A tiny voice answered, shaky and scared. "Who are you?" "A child." "I am a friend," I said. "What is your name?" "My name is Ava," the girl whispered. My heart broke clean in two. "Ava," I said, "why are you locked in here?" "I broke a plate," she said. "Aunt Susan said I have to stay in here until I learn to be careful." I pressed my forehead against the door, fighting to keep my breathing under control. My granddaughter was locked in a basement over a plate. "How long have you been in there?" I asked. "Since lunchtime," she whispered. "I am hungry and I need my shot. My arm hurts when I do not get my shot." Her insulin. They were holding back her insulin as punishment. "Listen to me, Ava," I said, trying hard to keep my voice steady. "I am going to help you. Not tonight, but soon. I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me?" There was a pause. "Are you really a friend?" she asked. "I am more than a friend," I told her. "I am someone who will not let anybody hurt you again. I promise." Then I heard footsteps overhead. Susan was coming down the stairs. "I have to go," I whispered, "but I will come back. I promise." I slipped out through a basement window and vanished into the night. I did not sleep at all. Back at the hotel, I sat up listening to the audio feeds and organizing what I caught. I labeled files. I saved backups. I built a clean chain of evidence. By morning, I had what I needed. My brother, Michael, was drunk and bragging like he was proud of himself. He said it plain as day. "The old man made it easy," Michael laughed. "He trusted everybody. All I had to do was get Tyler Reynolds to cook up the will and invent some debts. By the time anybody could question it, I had already sold the North pasture." "And the boy believes every bit of it," Susan added. "He thinks his father was a criminal. He will work himself into the dirt paying off debts that do not even exist." Michael chuckled. "What about the little girl?" he asked. "She is leverage," Susan said, cold as ice. "As long as we control her medicine, Brandon will never leave. He will never question us. He will stay our slave forever." I shut the recording off. I had heard enough. I picked up the phone. "James," I said, "call the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Tell them we have wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, and child endangerment. Tell them I want arrest warrants ready within 48 hours. James was quiet for a beat. "What about the property?" he asked. "I have a plan," I said. "Michael wants to sell what is left to cover his own mess. He has been hunting for a buyer." "I know," James said. "He listed it last month. 1,000 acres for $6 million. "Make an offer," I said. $8 million cash. Fast close. No inspections." "Walter," James said carefully, "that is your land. You are buying your own property." "I am not buying land," I told him. "I am buying their greed. And I am going to use it to bury them." 48 hours later, I walked into a conference room at Blackstone and Pierce, the fanciest law firm in Montana. I was not dressed like a drifter anymore. I wore a hand-tailored suit from London. My beard was trimmed neat. My back was straight. My hands were clean. I looked like what I was. A very wealthy man with very serious intentions. Michael and Susan were already seated at the table. They looked nervous, but excited too. That $8 million offer had them feeling lucky. They could not believe somebody would pay that much that fast. Tyler Reynolds sat beside them, smooth and confident, flipping through paperwork like he owned the world. The same man who notarized the fake will. The same man who helped erase me. Brandon was there too. They brought him like a prop. They put him in a cheap suit and parked him in a corner like a servant waiting for instructions. He did not look at me. He did not recognize me. But there was another chair. A small chair beside Brandon. And in it sat Ava. My granddaughter wore a dress that was too big for her. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked tired, scared, and way too quiet for an 8-year-old. When I walked in, her face changed. She squinted at me like she was trying to remember something from a dream. James stood at the head of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "may I introduce my client, Walter Grayson." That name meant nothing to Michael. He stood up with a salesman's smile and held his hand out. "Mr. Grayson," he said smooth. "Pleasure to meet you. I hope we can wrap this up quickly. I think you will find the property exceeds expectations." I did not take his hand. I just looked at him until his smile started to wobble. "Sit down, Michael," I said quiet. He blinked like he did not understand. I said it again, still calm. "Sit down." Something in my voice made him obey. He sat. I walked to the head of the table and let my eyes move across the room. Susan was clutching her necklace like it could save her. Tyler Reynolds was shuffling papers, suddenly less comfortable. Brandon stared down at the tabletop, like looking up might get him punished. And Ava kept watching me, those little eyes working hard. You do not recognize me, I said to the room. None of you do. 12 years is a long time. I paused long enough for the silence to get heavy. But I remember every one of you. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out a photograph. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an old photo. It was me, my wife Linda, and my son Brandon. We were standing on that same ranch on the day I bought it. Sun on our faces, dust on our boots, smiles that were still real back then. I slid the picture across the table. Michael picked it up. The color drained out of his face so fast it was almost scary. No, he whispered. No, that cannot be. You are dead. You were supposed to be dead. I died the day you decided I needed to disappear, I said. But death did not keep me. Susan shot up out of her chair, so hard it scraped the floor. This is a scam, she screamed. This man is an imposter. Walter is gone. Walter was a criminal. I looked her dead in the eye. I am standing right here, Susan, I said. The same Walter who paid $3.2 million for that ranch. The same Walter whose signature you helped use on a fake will. The same Walter whose son you turned into unpaid labor. Then I turned to Brandon. He was frozen like a statue, mouth slightly open, eyes wet, like his body did not know whether to hope or protect itself. Brandon, I said gently, look at me. He did not move. So I said it again slower. Really look at me. He raised his head. He stared, and I watched the moment it hit him, like a bolt of lightning straight through the chest. Dad, he breathed. Hello, son, I said. Brandon stood up, so fast his chair fell backward. He took one step toward me, then stopped, like he was afraid the world might slap him for wanting this. They told me you stole money, he said. They told me you ran out on us. They told me Mom died because of you. They lied, I said. And I can prove it. I nodded toward James. James hit a button, and the speakers in the room crackled alive. Michael's voice filled the air. Slurred. Loud. Proud of himself. The old man made it easy, he laughed. He trusted everybody. All I had to do was get Tyler Reynolds to cook up the will and invent some debts. By the time anyone could question it, I had already sold the North Pasture. Michael sprang to his feet, face twisted up in panic. That is doctored, he shouted. That is fake. You cannot record private conversations. I can, I said, calm as a fence post in winter, when those conversations are proof of a crime. I held up a finger as I listed them. Wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery. Then I said, and there is more. I pressed another button. This time it was Susan's voice. Cold, flat, like she was talking about tools, not people. She is leverage, Susan said. As long as we control her medicine, Brandon will never leave. He will be our slave forever. The room went dead quiet. I looked at my granddaughter. Ava had tears rolling down her cheeks. Silent tears. But there was also a small smile trying to break through, like she knew something had finally shifted in the earth. I turned back to Susan. You used my granddaughter's disease like a weapon, I said. You withheld insulin from an 8-year-old to keep her father obedient. I stepped toward her, slow and steady. Do you know what that is called, Susan? I asked. That is child abuse. That is endangerment. And in Montana, that can put you away for 15 years. Susan backed up until her shoulders hit the wall. You cannot prove anything, she hissed. It is your word against ours. I gave her a small smile. Not anymore. The conference room door opened. 4 Federal Bureau of Investigation agents walked in, and the county sheriff came right behind them. One agent read from a paper like he had done it 1,000 times. Michael Whitaker, he said, you are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, and forgery. He turned his head. Susan Whitaker, you are under arrest for child endangerment and conspiracy to commit fraud. Then he looked at the third man. Tyler Reynolds, you are under arrest for notarizing false documents and conspiracy to commit fraud. Tyler Reynolds tried to run. He made it 3 steps. An agent tackled him so hard his face smacked the carpet with a dull thud that felt, to me, like the sound of a door finally closing. Michael started talking fast, hands out like he could bargain his way out of cuffs. Walter, wait, he said. We are family. We can fix this. I will give you the ranch back. I will sign it over. Whatever you want. I walked up close enough to smell fear cutting through his expensive cologne. You killed my wife? I said quietly. You let her die believing I abandoned her. My voice stayed low, but every word hit like a hammer. You stole 12 years from my son. You threatened the life of a child. And you think we can fix this with paperwork? I leaned in a little closer. There is nothing to fix. Then I straightened up. You are going to prison, I told him. Your accounts are going to be frozen. Your assets are going to be seized. When you get out, if you get out, you will be living off whatever pity you can find. I held his eyes. And every night you close your eyes, I want you to remember this room. Remember that everything you built sat on lies. And I pulled it all down. The agents cuffed him. They cuffed Susan too. She screamed about lawyers and rights and how this was not fair. Tyler Reynolds got hauled up off the carpet, still trying to talk his way out like words could erase a decade of damage. Then all three of them were marched out. The door shut, and for the first time in a long time, the air felt clean. I turned to Brandon. He was holding Ava tight. Both of them were crying. Not loud, just letting it out like a dam cracking. I walked over and knelt so I was eye level with my granddaughter. Hi, Ava, I said softly. Do you remember me? She nodded and wiped her face with her sleeve. You were the man who talked to me through the door, she said. You said you would come back. I did, I told her. And I am not leaving again. I stood and faced my son. I am sorry, I said. I am sorry I was not here. I am sorry I could not protect you. And I am sorry about your mother. Brandon shook his head. You came back, he said. That is what matters. Then he hugged me. At first it was stiff and awkward, like his body forgot how to do it. Then he softened, and I felt years of distance start to melt. What happens now, he asked. Now, I said, we go home. I looked around that conference room. Papers scattered everywhere. Chairs out of place. Empty space where the worst people I knew had been sitting. The real home, I added. The one we are going to rebuild together. We walked out of that law firm as a family. Brandon, Ava, and me. Outside, the sun was dropping behind the mountains, turning the sky gold and red like a slow-burning fire. James stood by the car waiting on us. The property reverts to your name within 30 days, he said. The trust accounts are already being transferred, and a medical team is ready for Ava. Brandon blinked. Medical team? He repeated. I looked down at Ava and smiled. You are going to one of the best children's hospitals in the country, I told her. They will make sure you never have to worry about your medicine again. Ava's eyes went wide. For real? She asked. For real, I said. She hugged me hard around the waist, holding on like I was the first solid thing she had found in a world that kept trying to sweep her away. I hugged her back, and I looked at Brandon. There is one more thing, I said. Something I never told anyone. I pulled out my phone and showed him the geological survey. 12 years ago, I said, right before I went to Africa, I found a lithium deposit on land I bought under a separate company name. Nobody ever connected it to the ranch. I scrolled to the numbers. The royalties tied to it have grown to around $340 million, I said. And it belongs to you and Ava. Brandon stared at the screen like it was written in another language. He stared at the numbers. Then he looked at me, voice barely working. We are millionaires, he whispered. I shook my head. We are family, I corrected. That is worth more than any pile of money. We got in the car and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, the law firm shrank into the distance. Somewhere inside, Michael was being booked. Susan was losing her jewelry. Tyler Reynolds was realizing he had built his life on other people's ruin, and now it was collapsing. I did not feel sorry for any of them. They took everything from us. They built their comfort on our pain. Now they would learn what it feels like to have nothing. I looked over at Ava. She had fallen asleep against her dad's shoulder. I looked at Brandon. He was staring out the window at the mountains, like he was seeing them for the first time in years. Out in Africa, I learned something. The hardest part is not surviving. The hardest part is coming home. But I also learned something else. No matter how long you are gone, no matter how much time gets stolen, family is worth fighting for. They tried to bury my name. They tried to steal my legacy. They tried to break my son and use my granddaughter like a pawn. They failed, because some truths do not stay buried. Some debts do not get erased. And some fathers will walk through hell itself to come home. If you have ever fought for your family, if you have ever waited in the dark for justice to show up, press the subscribe button. And remember this, vengeance is not about anger. It is about love. Love for the people who deserve better. Love that refuses to die. My name is Walter, and I finally came home.